All righty, we'll go ahead and get started, and others might join us. It's 10:01 Eastern. Thanks everyone for joining this morning. Appreciate it. This is our second webinar session. Today we're going to get into some of the tasks specifically. This is our agenda for today. Welcome, safety and housekeeping always. And today's more foundational task, kind of building the foundation of your energy management system. These are very, very closely related to ISO 14000 or any management system for that matter. Not too much that is very, very energy specific. There can be good input from central office on these, and we'll talk about that as we go. We'll have some review questions. You can watch for the little lightning bolt throughout the slide deck. That's something you might see again at the end, just to emphasize a few points. And then, of course, we'll look ahead at next schedule and data, some of the data collection items, and have time for some questions and answers. Again, we pull task 7 into this first group because task 7 and task 1 go so closely together. Even though it's in the planning section, it does tie together with task 1 and 7. And as you'll actually see on the playbook for task 1 actually has part of the table is to be done during task 7. So we pull those together, and we'll actually do them back to back when we do the task. We'll go 1, 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just because they tie together so closely. Just like to welcome everybody. Again, this is our second of 8 2-hour webinar sessions. We did have our first one-on-one call last week. It would have normally been the week of the 4th of July, but we moved it out a week. That's why we're coming right back together this week. After last week, it was great to get to talk to you all one-on-one and learn some more about you and your sites. And thank you for being here today. Just make sure you're safe if you're driving or in a building or even at home. Just make sure you know your exit paths. There's no distractions. We just want everyone to be very safe. Again, ask questions anytime during the webinar. You're more than welcome to. If you're not talking, please mute yourself. That just maintains a quality background sound, but please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question at any time. And we are recording the sessions, and we'll be sending the link out to the recording in a day or two. Again, support for the cohort, the LEAR Corporation, of course, you got a strong central office, Berkeley Labs for the DOE recognition program, and the 50,001 Navigator is run out of Berkeley Labs. And then, of course, Advanced Energy. We'll do a quick review of just a couple items from the previous sessions, and we'll do this each session. Just a couple of acronyms: SEM, Strategic Energy Management System. You'll see those a lot. Significant energy use, that's a very important one. We'll talk about that specifically in our next session, task 8 and 9. We only do 2 tasks in the next session because they are very important and take some effort. Energy performance indicators, baselines, and of course, plan, do, check, act. And of course, repeat is the best thing that keeps us doing continual improvement. We talked about our pathway, moving from training. We did a 2.5 day training, and now we're moving more into implementation through the 50,001 Ready program, and then perhaps someday down the road, you may go for ISO 50001 third-party certification. But so we're moving somewhat from training more into implementation of some of the principles and practical items. Again, a little more commitment, a little more time to do that. And again, 50,001 Ready is self-attesting. When you get ready to get recognized, you don't have any audits. You have your own internal audit, but you don't have any external third-party audit from DOE or anybody else. You self-attest that you've completed the task and provide a couple of forms. And that's the only time you really update anything, upload anything. 50,001 Ready is pretty much of a download path. You download a lot of stuff, but you don't really upload things to 50,001 Ready. only at the very end when you go for recognition, there's a self-attesting form and an energy data, one energy data form, which is like the spot 1 year of data. We talked about the energy big picture. We're in this industrial box here, and we talked a lot about greenhouse gases, and there's still a lot of carbon-based fuels in the industrial segment, and very small, relatively small amount of electricity. But this is kind of where we're focused on this box here. 26.7 quadrillion BTUs of energy in 2022. That's a lot of energy. Talked about carbon, just no carbon and sustainability and greenhouse gas emissions are something that you all do focus on to some extent, but combustion does generate carbon dioxide. When you mix methane and oxygen and burn it, you get CO2 and water vapor. And that carbon dioxide is what is a greenhouse gas, and it insulates the planet. Also electrical, we talked about electrical. The electricity does have some greenhouse gas emission content, carbon content, because even though the motor in your plant is not generating carbon or carbon dioxide, the electricity to run that motor somewhere upstream was probably made with some coal or natural gas. And this is regional. It depends on where you are, how clean or how much carbon is in your electricity, and you can find those numbers. So there is some emission or some combustion related to electricity that you would want to account for in your carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas emissions. And again, I mentioned this 50,001. It is free. It's a download pretty much only. You don't upload any of your site info or your playbooks. Once you fill those playbooks out, they're yours. And of course, we have a multi-site set up for you all in 50,001 ready. Also, we will, since you all are ISO 14001 focus, we will focus on leveraging what you have already done for 14001 to help you move forward with 50. There's a lot of tasks that are very, very similar. There's some that have no connection or very little, but some there are, and we should take advantage of that for sure. Today's content, we're going to talk about task 1 through 7. The 50,001 ready tool breaks down the 25 tasks into 7 sections. And if you kind of unwrap the plan, do, check, act model, it would go left or right. So the first 13 tasks are planning, building the foundation, planning your energy collection, and so forth. So there's a whole lot of planning to do. And then as you're planning, you start to implement things. That's the doing part. And then at some point down the road, you want to start evaluating, how are you doing? I planned what I'm going to do. I'm starting to do it. Now let's evaluate, let's monitor, measure some things, see how we're doing, measure our energy performance improvement. Internal auditing is definitely a big check item in management review as well. And then once we check things, we're going to act, the last box, act. We're going to act to fix things. That's corrective action and continual improvement. And then basically you kind of go back and check your plans. Are my plans still good? Is my policy good? Do I need to tweak my policy? Any updates to scope or legal and other requirements? Any updates to my energy? Are my SCUs still the same things? And so forth. And then you just repeat this cycle: plan, do, check, act, and repeat. And this repeating is where you get this continual improvement. Building a foundation, these are tasks 1 through 3, plus we're going to add 7, which ties back into 1. But this looks at things like risk and opportunities, strategic issues. This can be at a pretty high level from corporate. And Doug has already provided some documents for you all to a shared drive for task 1 through 3. Legal and other requirements, interested party, scope and boundaries. These are all items that you have done for 14001. You have defined these. You have a list of these items somewhere that you don't need to reinvent, but you want to consider from an energy point of view, or is there anything else to add to that list? And we'll talk about that a little bit. So if you kind of think about, this kind of reminds me of Game of Thrones, the North Wall or something like that. But anyway, you've got your your company. This is LEAR in here. You have your scope and boundaries. This is inside. This is protected. You have your energy management system. You have internal issues. You have external issues. And part of task one is to determine strategic issues that affect your ability to improve your energy performance and achieve the goals of 50,001 ready. So you want to think about what inside my company could be a barrier or a risk or an opportunity to help me. Same thing with external issues, and we'll kind of look and see what some of those might be. So thinking about internal issues, what kind of things from inside the company do you think could cause you be a barrier or cause you a risk to implementing your energy management system? Anyone have any thoughts on what might be a internal issue for LEAR? Anyone? Well, let's just think about a couple here. One um, thing to think about is what are your core business objectives? What is LEAR all about? What are your targets? This could even include things for greenhouse gas emissions. Your organizational structure, your policies, what kind of governance and organizational policies do you have? Culture, every company has its own culture and knowledge base. Those kind of things those could certainly be a benefit or an opportunity.
That was gonna be my point, but I was on mute. Sorry. I was gonna
Oh,
say
that's okay.
knowledge.
Go ahead, Aaliyah.
Well,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I was just gonna say knowledge.
Yep.
I think that um internally, I know at our plant we don't have a lot of knowledge about 50,001 or energy, so
Mm-hmm.
um that would be one for us for sure.
Yeah. Does anybody think financial or having money or finances can be an issue for implementation of energy projects? Sometimes you have to fight for the money, or we always had a capital we had a capital budget submission. We kind of went on a calendar year, so around August or September, about this time of year, not too far down the road, we'd start submitting all our requests for capital or projects. And then it was a kind of a, not really a competition, but a prioritization of those based on needs, financial resources, directions of the company. So the financial resources can always be a technology. That could be an internal issue. Where is your technology compared to the industry? Are you way down the road? Are you ahead? Are you leading technology? Things like that, and that can be related to your processes as well as energy and sustainability goals. Certainly these days, those are absolutely part of your culture, and definitely tied to energy. You really can't decouple energy from greenhouse gas emissions. The best way to manage your greenhouse gas emissions and your carbon reduction goals is to manage your energy, because there may be some other very small items that are greenhouse gas emissions, but most of the greenhouse gas emissions that you would be concerned about are going to come from energy consumption, either natural gas, other fossil fuels, or electricity. There may be some fugitive emissions. Those are things you need to account for. Methane leaking or refrigerants leaking are certainly part of that. But most of the energy that you consume is directly related to an amount of carbon. Well, let's think about the same thing from an external issue. Who outside of your company can influence you or have an influence on your ability to do an energy management system? Any thoughts on that?
I was thinking about our utilities like providers potentially.
Absolutely. The
Government
utilities.
agencies.
Yes, absolutely. And that really, those two really fall under legal requirements, like air
Mhm.
permits, environmental items. Those are really your government agencies. And it can be, I mean, it can literally be, federal, state, county, city. You could be right down to the the city level and have a local city ordinance that affects your particular site in that city, but it may not affect the other sites. If it's a federal, it would affect everyone. If it's a state, Michigan, Alabama, law, then it could affect the sites in the states. But certainly regulations, and again, one thing, again, having 14,001 and environmental tends to have a lot more legal requirements than energy. There's not too many laws or legal things, but some things connected to an air permit could be related to energy. I know we've worked with air permits. Uh, we've looked at those with people, and sometimes they do have something that limits how much you can run a piece of equipment. I know, diesel engines, there's like tier one, tier two, tier three, tier four. I don't know what tier they're on now, but diesel engine generators, depending on their emissions controls on the diesel, may have a limited amount of time you can run them. I know people have boilers, and boilers they're not required, but they can be limited if they have this thing called maximum achievable control technology. It's called MAC, M-A-C-T. And if your boiler doesn't have the MAC, M-A-C-T, maximum achievable control technologies for emissions, it may be limited in hours or limited in how much you can run it in terms of load. We worked with a company, and they had a huge boiler and they needed it, but they were only allowed to run it at 20%, based on the not having MAC emission. It comes down to money, to put the maximum achievable control technology on their emission system for their boiler would cost about as much as a new boiler. So they were kind of rocking a hard place trying to figure that out. But definitely environmental issues, legal requirements. Exactly. What competition, what is the competitive world you're in? Automotive can be very competitive. Sometimes the issues around competing can have some influence. Technology, again, you got internal technology develop and external technology develop, and um, I'm sure there's frequently things that you all see in the car seat development technology. I'm sure they're always getting better and trying to be safer and all those types of things. Economic conditions certainly it can impact you from the outside. Political, social, cultural conditions. Again, this is an election year, and whatever happens in November could impact the policies and things that could impact you all in a positive or a negative way. So political scenarios, things like that, social issues, and so forth. Great, and thanks for your participation. So internal and external issues are really what we want to kind of focus on. So we're going to look inside the navigator. Again, this is the 50,001. This is actually my 50,001 account. I got you guys in here. I'm just going to jump into one of these dashboards and we'll look at task one. Again, all these tasks are laid out the exact same way. You've got the statement, task one, we determine strategic issues, internal and external, that affect our ability to improve energy performance, achieve our goals, and so forth. And getting it done is very straightforward. Identify internal and external issues that impact you. This comes out of section 4.1 of 50,001 ready. I'm sorry, 50,001 the standard, which is the context of the organization. In here, there's a full description. This has lots of good things. Again, I call this the example tab because it almost always has a list of examples. Not every single one, but most of them. And here's some of the things we just talked about, but examples of external issues, examples of internal issues. So this section here, if you're looking at this task, can really kind of make you think or give you some good ideas for things to think about. And these are many of the things we talked about on our slide, and that's a great tab. There is a decarbonization tab. If you want to look at this relative to this task, it does have some information in here. These are not requirements, it's just information, but it would help you relate these, task one, developing these strategic issues or identifying these. If decarbonization is something that you all are doing, which you are, you may want to just look at these for information. And then of course, this is very important. Optional guidance, 14,001. It's got 9,002, but in your case, 14,001 transition tips. This kind of tells you, how does this task relate to 14,001? What can you use from 14,001 that you may already have in place? So it says things like 14,001 requires that issues including environmental conditions and so forth be evaluated. So in some point, when you got 14,001 certified, each site or from a corporate level, you've identified some issues. You can take that list, you don't need to recreate one, and add energy to it. And now maybe you have a combined 14 and 50,000 document that documents these strategic issues. So this is a very key tab for you all at LEAR, because you have such a strong 14,001 presence. You need to leverage that every bit that you can, and only invent things or only create things that you absolutely have to, but piggyback on board 14,000 where it fits. And task 1 through 7 very much fit with things you have already done. The playbook, you can download a playbook here, a blank playbook, and we'll look at the playbook for task 1 in just a second. Also, if you want to kind of save a little time and just get it over with, you can go to this My Navigator tab, click on Playbooks, and there's a tab here. You can download all the playbooks at once. A lot of people like to do this. You'll get a zip file and have all 25 playbooks, and you can put them on a folder somewhere on a server, and then you'll have them. Some people like to just go task by task. That's just fine. You get them. You can get them right off the task right here.
Yeah, we have it in our team site.
Excellent. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Doug. We talked about this, but this is the assignments. It's where you can update the task. If you put, let's see, I've got Grand Rapids here, so these people can put themselves in there and update task. But since I'm wanting to show you, you can, and I showed you this, I think, on the one-on-one calls, but you can update the task status with this bar right here. And anybody on this approver list, Leah, Kevin, others can do that. So that's the way you do that for updating task. So let's actually look at the playbook for task 1. And again, you can see, like I said, task 1, task 7 is on this same task 1 playbook, but this repeats the getting it done. So the getting it done on the tab in the navigator right here is also repeated right on the top of the playbook. So that's very useful. You can kind of see that. And again, this is like a recipe card, a guide. It's a guide. It's not something you have to do verbatim. It's a Word document. You can update it and tweak it to match. You cannot use it at all. If you have existing documents, you may not need the playbook except maybe for a checklist. But basically, you want to have a risk and opportunity register or list. This is an example. It has lots of things listed here. And we'll send you these, but they are filled out. They have examples, and basically it has a column I or E, internal or external, R or O, risk or opportunity, and then it lists the issue. And then when we get into task 7, so that's task 1, or these first 3 columns, you're just identifying the issues. When we get into task 7, you're doing more of an evaluation of the risk and addressing the risk to mitigate the risk. So you may have 6 items here, you may have 3 pages. It just depends on your site. There's quite a few good examples here. And that's it. That's it for this task 1. Identify internal and external strategic issues that can impact your 50,001 ability to improve your energy performance and achieve the outcomes of your energy management system. Very straightforward. We'll come back to this one when we get to task 7. Any questions on task 1? Because we're going straight to task 7. I do have a slide. I do want to emphasize this because sometimes we see over the course of doing 8 or 10 of these cohorts, sometimes we get the feeling that the playbook, people get, I don't know, it's not a barrier, but sometimes they get wound up by the playbook and think, I didn't do this, I didn't do every single thing on the playbook. Again, you're the dog, the playbook is the tail, not the other way around. You wag the tail, don't let the playbook be the dog wagging you. This is not the way it should be. The playbook is a guide. The playbook is something for you to use to help you. It's not something for you to go, oh, I didn't do that. I'm messing up. I'm not going to make it. It's a guide. And plus you have so much stuff already in place for 14,000. So just keep that in mind. Use the playbooks to help you, but don't let them become a barrier. They're to guide you to connect whatever you're currently doing, connect existing process to 50,001. So just keep that in mind. The playbooks are a guide, and they're not to try to hold you up or become a barrier, or that you have to fill out every single piece of every single one. They're a guide. And there's some that you may really need to use and really need to follow. There's others that you probably have stuff in place that absolutely covers everything in them. Task 7, risk to the energy management system. It's in the planning section, but we tie it into the context of the organization. We determine strategic risk and opportunities. That was done in task 1 to ensure our organization can achieve intended outcomes. We plan and implement actions to address these risks. So you're going to kind of rank these risks, and then if you have something you consider a pretty significant risk, you're going to say, well, what can I do to mitigate that risk? And then this is one of the most favorite words in 50,000 in any management system, but 50,001 is effectiveness. So identify the risk, take actions to mitigate the risk, and oh, by the way, after a while, let's go check and see if our actions were effective. In other words, what you want to think about is what can get in the way of your success of implementing energy management, and what helps, risk and opportunities. So again, a risk, something that poses a threat, something that can be a barrier, something that can stop you from your implementation or slow down your ability to do something, and it can be any number of things. Opportunity, that's something that's very positive, has a great impact. In my opinion, you have a strong upper management commitment. You have strong central office. That's an opportunity for a very positive impact. So those things can really help you. The energy team, the sites, with help from central office, identify these risks and help assess these at the site level, with certainly some input from central office. Here's some examples of things, a risk. In designing something, you design something and you put some energy information in that design for a new building, a new line, a new piece of machinery, and the contractor doesn't follow those specs. They totally missed it. It's a risk. If you contract something, they got to do it right. Maybe you have some reporting requirements that are a legal requirement or an internal requirement from LEAR, and the energy management system is not matching up to that. Data collection can be a risk for some places. Some places it's very complex, some places it's very simple. One place we worked, operational controls are typically the people that operate your SEUs, are maintenance or facility techs, or they may be, if it's something on the processing line that's an SEU, they could be operators. But this one area, it was HVAC. We worked with them. They were HVAC, and they always had turnover with their HVAC techs. They just could not keep those. And that was a risk because every other month they were having to train some new person about the operation controls for their SEUs. So it was an impact. Energy performance, weather. You have no control over the weather. It can be a risk. Severe weather can impact you. Poorly maintained equipment. A long and difficult capital approval process, that can be a risk. You have limited capital, you have difficulty getting capital for energy improvements. Not all energy improvements have to have capital, but some may need that. So those could be just some examples of risk that would slow down your ability to improve your energy or improve your energy management system. One of the things that Task 7 does is we must evaluate these risks and opportunities in terms of how they impact our energy management system and our ability to improve. 50,001, the standard, does require continual energy performance improvement over time, and you need to be able to do that. So once you identify these risks, you want to have planned some action items to address them as part of your energy management system. And you want to be able to show this process to an internal auditor or somebody that says, hey, here's our list of risks, or here's our list of issues, here's how we evaluated our risk, and the task playbook number 7 will tie back to number 1 and really show how to do that. So let's go back to our navigator, task 2. Again, every one of these is laid out exactly the same. Task statement, we determine the interested parties and other, 7. We determine the strategic risks and opportunities to ensure our organization can achieve the intended outcomes. And we implement actions to address these risks. Again, getting it done, identify the risk, create some actions to mitigate the risk, and check for effectiveness periodically. This is, again, jumps into section 6.1 of the standard for planning, but it ties back to section 4 and task 1 and task 2. Again, this is the full description of the task. Determine risk and opportunities. It ties it back to task 1 and task 2 in several paragraphs. Planning actions to mitigate the risk. It's got some information on that. Implementing the actions and checking for their effectiveness. And we'll kind of look at this. You can't really check for effectiveness the day you start. You need some time to pass, maybe 6 months or a year later. Then you go back and check, okay, I identified the issues. I made a risk analysis. I determined some actions to take for that risk. How did those actions work to mitigate the risk? And that effectiveness would be something you would do later on downstream. So lots of good information there. Again, tying this to 14,001, there's definitely some requirements for 14,001 to look at risk analysis, and you can check that out. Playbook, download the playbook right here. And again, you can update the status of task 2. So let's look at the playbook for number 7. And it's pretty short, and then it refers you back to task 1, but basically it's just some check boxes. Identify risk and opportunities. You have a process, you've identified the risk, you've reviewed the risk with top management, and so forth. We have plans to mitigate the risk, manage risk and opportunities, and that's pretty much it. It says we've developed a process back on task 1 playbook worksheet. So this is mostly just check boxes, thought processes things you have done. And then you go back to task 1 playbook, and this is where, and different people do this different ways. Again, this is not written in stone, but you do need to kind of have some way to evaluate the risk. And 2 factors that the example shows or the playbook shows is, what is the impact? If this risk happens, does it really hurt badly, or is it kind of minor? So like 1 is okay, 2 is medium, 3 is, yeah, this is a big impact. And then frequency or likelihood. What are the chances of this happening? So in this case, we kind of, and you score them. In this case, this was scored a 2, which means it has a medium impact, but it's very likely to happen. So, and then you can decide if that's medium, low, high, and then what kind of actions should I do to, this was the one I was talking about, vacancies for key energy engineers and HVAC technicians. This was a big risk for this site. They always had turnover here. It was a big impact. It happened frequently. So they had some actions to take. Again, evaluation of effectiveness. There's nothing here, but what I typically recommend is put something like check due on, say you do this summer, and maybe you say, okay, review effectiveness in the late winter or spring, 6 or 8 or months or a year. Say, check effectiveness March 1st, 2025, and then go from there. And then similarly for each one, and whatever your risks are, you score them. Here's one that's likely to happen, but it has very limited impact. Here's one. It's an opportunity, very good opportunity, very big impact, very likely to happen. And this was leadership. This was an excellent, and a couple of opportunities. I wanted to find, here's a capital availability for energy projects can be impacted by federal funding. This was a federal site that had federal money, had to go through the federal government procurement process. So it was very challenging, very likely to happen, very big impact. Um, and so they had some ideas there to try to work through that. Long lead times, that was high and high, and so forth. So you can read, you'll get this example. You can read through what some of the things, weather was in here, um, and so forth. So what causes me to be awake at night worrying about energy management systems? Probably nothing, but what are the risks? What can impact you? What can slow you down? And this can be things, like we talked about, from various different areas, internal, external issues, um, and so forth. And then you kind of want to get a feel for these. Is this a big deal? Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. It's a big impact. Is it likely to happen? No, I don't think it'll happen very often. At least I don't think so. So I might not need to worry about it. But if it's a 3 and a 3, very big impact, very likely to happen. And you can have other scoring criteria. This is kind of up to you. Like I said, this is a guide. This is something you can use, but you do need to kind of get a feel for ranking these somehow. Any questions on 1 and 7 and how they tie together?
Hey, Michael, are we
Yeah.
required to implement all the actions that we wrote, or is up to decide which one to perform?
That's a great question. And what we're talking about is this action to address
Yeah.
here. And again, these are, again, this is not something that, the key is effectiveness. The bigger key is the evaluation of effectiveness. And, you may, if I did an internal audit, I may go through here and look and see, was this effective? Did you do these things? And, you may, it's not necessarily a requirement that you do every single thing you write in here. It's not a requirement, but you do want to probably make sure that if you have something that's a 3 and a 3 and a high and you have some specific actions, you want to probably make sure that you do stay on top of those. If you have, like they have some things that were low and they still put some comments over here, but that would not be a priority to do these things compared to doing these items in the 3. So it does depend on the site. It depends on what's going on. What is your score? So if something is a high impact, those would be your priorities, certainly. And part of what you would want to check when you do your effectiveness evaluation is to say, hey, did we do these? Did this happen? Did we take these actions? Did they help? And kind of as over time, you'll kind of learn and maybe update these actions. But I would say the way to probably address these or think about these actions, if they're on a very high impact risk, not necessarily opportunity, because that's helping you. But if you have something that's on a very high impact risk on your scoring system, you definitely want to try to do these risk mitigation items. And then when you evaluate the effectiveness, you want to be able to say, yeah, we tracked this, we looked at this, we got ahead of the curve on that, and it really helped us avoid it, and it was effective. And then maybe you update this for the next go round. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But for example, for the capital projects that a site may not found or have the budgets for it, it's a high risk, but how do we evidence that we tried to perform it, but it wasn't possible?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a great question. Because sometimes, again, we put in here that they called their energy or maintenance department was a directorate of public works, and they were at the mercy of federal budgets. And sometimes they got sequestration means like the budget is just turned off. There is no money. The valve is shut. So sometimes that happens, and you hear on the news all the time about the budget's going to shut down the federal government. We're going to have no spending after March 1st and stuff like that. So that's kind of what they're talking about here. But yeah, if you need money for an energy improvement project and it's a risk because of the process you have to go through to get that funding, you can just put things in here like, we submitted this, we followed up, we were not selected, and it is what it is at that point, and then you
Mhm.
have to move on. But documenting, you could document some things like emails or spreadsheets or justifications or things you sent in for the capital funding that certainly would show that you're trying to mitigate this barrier. That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great questions. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, this is a tool. It's meant to help you, avoid the big risk and the big impacts. And again, prioritize it by what is high in this, what's a risk, what is high in this column, and then what things can you do or try to do to help get around those barriers or risk. Great questions. Thank you. Okay,
Hey,
now yes.
excuse me, Mike. Doug,
Yeah, Omar.
Doug, is this where we would use the opportunities from our treasure hunts?
Yes,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
excellent fit.
And then we would have the risk would be more based by plant. So we would have to have individual like conversations maybe with you on
What?
some of the risks that we would be doing.
yeah,
Yes,
the opportunities typically in here, you can put anything you want. They can be opportunities for energy improvement. They're typically more systematic type things. Because we do have a task 10 that is very specific for energy improvement opportunities, which would be a perfect fit for a treasure hunt output. Um, like you probably, and we'll get to that when we get to task 10. You probably have a list somewhere of opportunities that you've got. This one I want to work on now. I've got these on the back burner. I got these from my latest treasure hunt, and the opportunity for energy performance improvement projects is more focused on task 10, and these opportunities could certainly be part of that. But most of the things in here are risk, and the opportunities that are identified could certainly be those types of things as well if you really want to focus on something. But most of and certainly for task 7 is really focused on the risk mitigation portion of that. That makes sense.
Okay, that's what I was asking. So it'll be some of the treasure hunt would be in here, but most of this would be identifying your risk and then
Yeah.
the overall high opportunities within the organization.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then there would be definitely a secondary task 10 where you really focus in on those energy improvement opportunities. And we'll
similar to
talk about
your
that one.
significant aspects
Yes,
identification, and under your
exactly.
45,000, your safety risks and risk assessments. That's what
Exactly.
we're going to modify the risk assessment process from 14 to include risks identified and evaluated from energy.
so it's going to be on the aspect list, Doug, instead of the risk assessment on 45,000.
No, it'll be under the 45,000 risk assessment list.
Oh,
We'll
okay,
just add energy to the risk assessment. That way, they're asking us to identify these risks and evaluate them much the way we identify the safety risks.
gotcha.
So it's a better fit that way.
All right.
Great questions. Task 2, interested parties and legal and other requirements. Again, this is looking at your organization, excellent connection to 14,001, and great ability for central office input. So basically, interested parties that, who cares about what we're up to? And you define those, select those, and put them on a list. And I'm sure you have a list of interested parties for safety and for 14,000. But here's just some of the potential people, your suppliers, your leaders, your peers, regulators, that can be a big one. And that can be, you know, city, county, state, and federal. Your customers, you know, what do your customers want? What are they demanding? Automotive customers or automotive companies can be very demanding sometimes about what they want their supply chain to be doing. So they're definitely an interested party. Shareholders, boards of directors, you know, you name it. It just anybody that it has an interest and influence and expectations. You know, who do you report information to, both internally, both externally? Do you have to report certain things to EPA, to your headquarters, way up the line from all the LEAR sites and so forth? And just kind of think about those things. Two things to remember relative to auditing later on. The interested parties, you know, anything that you put in your energy management system as a requirement, and I always use the crazy example of we're going to put green jello in the cooling towers once a month because it works so good. If you say you're going to do that, then you need to do it. It's an auditable thing. If you invoke something on yourself, if you say, I'm going to do risk mitigation effectiveness evaluation every 6 months, the standard doesn't say you have to do it every 6 months. It says you need to do it periodically. But if you say in your procedure somewhere, I'm going to do it every 6 months, then that's the requirement you've invoked on yourself, and that becomes auditable. Also, you know, voluntary participation. Better Plants is not a statutory requirement for you to participate in, nor is 50,001. You're voluntarily participating in those two programs, and that would be considered an other requirement. So there's legal requirements, there's the law of the federal government, the state you're in, the city, the county, and then there's things you invoke on yourselves that would be a requirement for you, and then there's things you volunteer to follow. So thinking back here, you know, legal and other, they really split those into two areas. Legal is just what it sounds like. It's statutory. There's a law. It's part of an air permit. It's part of a tariff with a utility that tells us when and how much we can do with our some type of equipment or something. Other requirements are things you voluntarily decide to do and adhere to, and they are requirement. If you say I'm going to follow 50,001, then you've volunteered to follow the requirements therein. And when you do an internal audit of yourself, you would check yourself against 50,001 because you're volunteering to follow that. Better Plants has requirements and so forth. At defined intervals, you do a compliance check. This is like a little bitty mini internal audit for one specific item. It's in section 9.1.2 of the standard, and it says periodically, which most people do it once a year, you're going to check to see that you're in compliance with your legal and other requirements. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's not a full-blown system internal audit. It's not an external audit. It's just somewhere along the line you check a compliance check that you are not that you are meeting and following what you have identified as your legal and other requirements. So let's look inside the navigator for task 3. Nope, task 2. We determine the interested parties and the energy related legal and other requirements relevant to energy performance. We defined intervals. We check our compliance with these legal and other requirements. Again, getting it done, identify the interested parties, determine their needs and expectations of the interested party. What do they want from me? What do they want to know? What do they want me to report? Legal and other requirements. Again, these are identify, you know, make a list, and then have a process to periodically evaluate compliance. And if you'll see in here that this is section 4.2, but also that little compliance is in the performance evaluation section of the standard 9.1.2, where it actually says do that compliance check of legal and other requirements. Otherwise, it's in section 4, context of the organization. Full description, interested parties. There's, again, the example tab. You know, here's a list of, you know, your next door neighbor, your neighbors in your company, you know, your customers, suppliers, parent organizations, professional trade and trade associations, any of these groups. could be an interested party. What are their expectations? What do they want from you? What kind of information? Conduct a compliance evaluation. This talks about how you can do that. Looking at, am I in compliance with the legal and other requirements that I have identified that I am going to adhere to? Again, you have gone through this process for 14,000 and probably 45,000 too. So, this is just a matter of looking at what you have done and adding any energy aspects to that. Again, 14,000 tends to have more legal requirements because of permits, EPA, state requirements for air permits, water permits, spill prevention, all kinds of things that may be related to environmental and safety. A true legal item for energy is more rare, but you may have some. Again, optional guidance for 14 is very extensive here because they relate so well together. You can see the relationship here. Download the playbook, blank playbook right here. And again, the assignment tab to help you, update your status. So task 2 is all about legal and other requirements, and we'll check that out here on the playbook. Again, it's a list. Identify interested parties and their needs and expectations. It's just a list and a table. You may have a list and a table like this already, or something similar to this for 14 or 45. You can add to it. This example has several different things: utilities, contractors. These are some federal military agency. They had some leadership, a lot of alphabet soup acronyms in here, but there's a lot of interested parties. Legal and other requirements. Again, this was a federal agency, so they had lots of them, lots of legal requirements from the government about how to run and report data. And you can see these examples. You won't have near this many, but it's a very thorough example. Anyway, so it's a list, it's a table. It's a table of legal and other requirements. And then there's some check boxes. We commit to meeting all the above requirements. We've established a frequency for reviewing and updating our legal requirements. And we have a process to evaluate compliance. This is the section 9.1.2 of the 50,001 Ready Standard, where we said we have a process for evaluating compliance. We've assigned roles. Who did it? When did we do it? When are we going to do it? So that's kind of the third little bullet, a little mini audit of compliance with your long list or short list of legal and other requirements. So again, very straightforward. It's a table of a list. You probably have this table somewhere similar for other ISO management systems, and you can add to it for energy. All righty, scope and boundaries. This one is usually very simple. It can get complicated depending on what the situation is, and we'll talk about some of those situational things. But basically, we've documented and approved a scope and boundaries. You've done that for 14. You have to have a scope and boundaries. It's typical. It couldn't be exactly the same. There are some requirements to consider for energy, but basically, it's a boundary, and then inside that boundary, the scope. So here's 3. These are actually 3 of your sites. Grand Rapids on the left, McCalla in the middle, Tulawik on the right. So basically, I love Google Maps. It's a great tool to use for boundary examples. And basically, you take this picture and draw a circle around it and say, my boundary is this, and everything inside it. All the energy that comes across that boundary is going to be in my management system. I got electrical coming into a substation. I got natural gas piped in. I've got a liquid propane tank that gets filled up manually from a tractor trailer or whatever. I have a diesel fuel tank that gets filled up from a diesel fuel truck or whatever. Whatever comes across my boundary, that's my boundary. Then for the scope, the only real question is there anything inside that boundary that I don't manage? And usually this is my scope, or this is my boundary. My scope is everything in it. Some exceptions or some cases where you might have something, say for example, this little white building, say that was a warehouse area and you leased that out to a third party and you didn't store anything in there and you didn't do anything. It had a separate electrical meter. That meter was paid by that other third party company and they just leased it from you. Well, it's in your boundary, but it's not in your scope because you don't control it, you don't manage it, somebody else does. So you would exclude it, and that's fine. Or this is my boundary and everything in it, which is usually the case with most manufacturing sites. If you have some unusual situation where you've got a third party doing something on your site, or you have something where you have to have the authority and responsibility to manage the energy the energy consumption, energy efficiency. You have to be able to control and manage the energy consumption. So as long as you have the authority over everything in here, then it's everything in your boundary. So the boundary is a line, the scope is what's in it. In this case, again, same thing. If this building back here was something different that was in the boundary, or you just draw your boundary here and say, this is our property, but it's not going to be in my boundary. It's somebody else uses this building. If it's both these buildings and it's everything in here is all yours, then it's the whole boundary and everything in it. Same thing here, the whole boundary, everything in it. So that's kind of the boundary is the line. And here's an example. This is Fort Bragg. They now changed the name to Fort Liberty, but this is in North Carolina. This were the 82nd Airborne and several other 17 or 18 other Army commands, but the 82nd Airborne is the biggest. They have, I think, 45 to 50,000 soldiers there at any given time or deployed. So again, the boundary is the fence line or the property line. Here's my boundary, the blue line. The scope is what is managed inside the boundary. So in this case, there were lots of things inside this boundary that were not in the scope because there's a Kentucky Fried Chicken on the base. Well, the local Directorate of Public Works is not going to manage the energy of the Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that's out of scope. And then they had a hospital. Womack Hospital is on the base. The hospital is operated completely independent from the base operation, so they had no control over the energy consumption, management, efficiency of the hospital. So in this case, there were some exclusions. This is a huge boundary. So just think about your site, in terms of, is it everything in? Is it an all in, which is very simple? It's this boundary and everything in it done. Or just think, are there any cases? Does anybody know of a case where they may have something that might be need to be considered to be out of scope in any way, or most all the sites, everything inside is mine, I manage it, I own it, I run it? Any exclusion questions or things you might have a question about inside your boundary in terms of, is it in scope or not in scope?
Yeah, some of our sites are located in our OEM customers' facility, and we have no control over most of the energy management. They simply supply us a couple circuits to run our equipment.
Okay. Yeah, that would definitely be something to consider for sure.
Yeah, we're the Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Fort Liberty is it's literally a city. I mean, there's everything for 60 or 80,000. There's like 80,000 soldiers and another 60 or 70,000 employees. It's crazy. It's its own little city right outside Fayetteville, North Carolina. All righty. Yeah, again, that's just pointing, most of the energy is consumed over here, and this is mostly just land to where they do exercises and artillery ranges and so forth. Okay, scope and boundaries, pretty straightforward. Task 3, getting it done. We have documented the scope and boundaries, our energy management system. We've considered issues, we've considered legal and other requirements, but basically it's a scope, it's a boundary and what's in it. It's section 4.3 of the standard. This is a good list of, where to start. When you're determining your scope and boundaries, these are some things you can think about. All kinds of maps and diagrams, utilities, processes. Google Maps, I love that overhead shot, just kind of shows you everything. But this, again, the example tab has some good things in here. The activities that you're including, if you do have a situation where you're a tenant and not the owner, then that would be something to consider. Defining the boundaries. Yes, sir.
Just a quick comment here. I've got to run to another meeting that just got called. I wanted to let the team know that we have the beginnings of the documents, an updated manual, procedure manual, and forms. Socorro has done a wonderful job revising and updating a lot of these documents and put them into the team site for others to look at. Feel free to look at it. And if you know something else, it'll be edited. We'll be going through them this week and trying to update our navigator status as well. So great job, Socorro. And if you get a chance, other people can take a look at.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, thanks. Again, that's a great to leverage. You know, what you're doing is a great process. You have things, you know things. You're going to leverage the knowledge and the documentation that you already have, and make it available and useful to transition and build an energy management system, but not from scratch, from relating it to existing processes. Again, playbook, and you can update your task. Pull up the playbook for task 3. Fairly straightforward. We considered strategic issues and requirements. We've identified the extent of the activities, our facilities, and so forth. Things to consider, and that it was filled out. You know, what are internal and external considerations, if there are any, for your boundaries and scope, and then details of your scope. This case was a little bit complicated because one of the things, they did have a lot of energy that came across the lines, but it was considered the things that were used for the military equipment. So if there's diesel fuel for airplanes or aviation fuel, diesel fuel for tanks and jeeps and other things, helicopters and all that, that was not managed. That was out of scope. You know, that came across the boundaries. We identified it as an energy source, but they did not manage that because it was not to be managed. They managed all the buildings and the heating and air conditioning and lighting and other energy sources for the buildings, but not the military-based fuel. So you probably won't have any exclusions. You may, but this just shows you the details, and that's pretty much it. You describe your boundary, you make a boundary scope and boundary statement. You may want top management to take a look at it just to make sure it makes sense. Pretty straightforward. And again, we'll send all these example playbooks out to you to go along with the one you can get right here, a blank one. All righty. Any questions on scope and boundaries? So we've kind of already talked about this. I'll just touch on it. Again, Doug mentioned this, but you know, thinking about task 1 and 7, how they go together, 2 and 3, these first organizational context tasks. Just think about these things. You know, what items do you already have in place to support the completion of these tasks? Doug has talked about documents on the shared drive that are available for you to use. Of course, you'll have the playbooks. Also think about, can these be supported with any items you're doing for Better Plants program? May not be directly applicable here, but when we get into some of the energy data collection, you definitely may be able to leverage some of the stuff you've already doing for Better Plants in terms of collecting energy data, submitting data to Better Plants program, including improvement and so forth. And the other thing to think of, you know, is there anything related to these tasks that would meet with your goals for carbon footprint or greenhouse gas emission reduction? And do you want to consider those things and tie those things in? Any comments or information on any of these questions that we haven't already mentioned? Anything else from anyone relative to these first 4 tasks? Okay. Oops, section 2, section 2 is 3 tasks, 4, 5, and 6 is a leadership section. So we have context of the organization. We're kind of building that foundation of who we are. The next section really focuses on top-down commitment and guidance from the top. And these are kind of the things we're thinking about. Is there a strong top management commitment to the energy management system, clear and well communicated energy policy, adequate resources for the energy team to implement 50,001 energy management system. So the top number 4 is our top management demonstrates leadership and commitment to continual improvement. So you have good top management commitment. That's very, very important. The top managers for both the corporate office and the site level, like the plant manager, is very important that they be aware and providing support and information and communication on what you're doing relative to 50,001. This is very true of 14,000 or 45,000. There's a requirement for management commitment, just like for 50,000. So you've been down that road before, and your top manager should be very aware of, you got 50 coming along. It's just like your commitment to 14 and 45 and 9,000. So here's some of the questions. Where is top management? Typically at the sites, the top manager is the plant manager or site manager. Also central office can have some top management, even corporate, above the US and Mexico's central headquarters offices, there's could be even a higher level. So, figuring out where that top management is, getting them engaged, getting their support. It seems to be very well in place for LEAR. Who sets the energy policy? Don't know if y'all have decided if there's going to be one energy policy and all the sites adopt that, or if the sites will do an energy policy. But there's different approaches for that. But you do, one of the tasks, next task 5 is about the energy policy. Who will do the management review? Typically the management review is site level. So it would be done by the site energy team with the site top manager. And who will confirm the commitment to, and we'll see that in the task 4 playbook. There's a lot of things, and I don't want you to have to read all this. It'll be in the slide deck, but this is just to kind of show you there are a lot of things in 50,001 that top management is responsible for. And sometimes part of the role as an energy manager or energy team leader at a site is to educate top management, because they may not understand or realize this. But a lot of these are ensure. That's like top management has delegated this and they're just going to ensure that it gets done. But there are some actual verbs in here that are things that top management should do. And one of them is communicate. Top management should send out notices, letters, reminders, promote the energy management system. They should directly communicate, not delegate it, not ensure somebody else does it, but do it and sign it from them to the world, to the site. Promote continual improvement, communicate and promote, direct and support. Support. So some of those are ensure, most of them are ensure ENPIs are effective, ensure we have objectives and targets, ensure action plans are implemented, ensure we achieve intended outcomes, and on and on and on. But some of these things are actually things they need to do for you and really support the management system for energy. Some of the things you might need to educate top management, on, why are we doing 50,001? What are the benefits of 50,001? How is it saving me money? How is it saving me energy, which saves me money? How is it impacting our carbon, our climate goals, our sustainability, and so forth? So and we'll look on the playbook. The playbook has a lot of things in it to help you educate your top management. Some of the things that you really need is the time and resources for the energy team, capital, help with capital funding for energy projects. Communicate is so important. Communicate the energy policy, make sure everyone understands it, help with awareness at the site. And resources is in here several times. And management reviews. Management reviews are very important, that the top managers participate, provide input, provide feedback to the energy team. All right. 50,001 ready, task 4. Again, our top management demonstrates leadership. Again, a couple of these things are optional, but it's things you may need to want to do or can do to help educate your management. What are the business drivers for an energy management system? What is the role of the top energy manager to support 50,001? And you want to brief top management on their role and how they're going to support you and so forth. Again, this is moving into section 5, which is leadership. Full description. In here, it gives you some examples of things to communicate to top management, things you may want to talk to them about. There's benefits to 50,001. Again, example tab. There's list of benefits. There's social benefits, business drivers. These are external business drivers. So all kinds of good information on here that you can share with your manager, top management, to say, hey, this is what we can benefit from internally if we do these things. Here's things we can benefit from social, external people. We can show them what we're up to. Internal business drivers. Lots of good lists in here. Excellent stuff. So definitely make use of that. Again, 14,001 relationship. There's a lot of overlap between these standards for top management. So you've done this, and they just need to understand the energy aspects of top management. Playbook, download there. So let's look at the playbook. Again, a couple of these things are optional. If you want to develop, benefits and business drivers, if you want to develop something to share with your top management, briefing to top management may be good to have a meeting when you get started on 50,001 and just let them know what you're up to, what you're doing, what the cohort's all about, how it's related to 14 and so forth. It even has an example for like a elevator speech, 3 minutes, lots of details. And again, these are optional. If your top manager is all in and you've got it, he knows what he's up to, he or she, you may not need to do this, but in some cases, you may need to use some of this to educate your site leader. Key influencers, these are some of the key people that your top manager needs to know who's who, what types of roles does he need to know is helping support the energy management system. These can be some of those interested parties. They can be the energy management team, other things like that. There's some examples. Again, this list is the same things that were on the screen of this PowerPoint slide, but the top manager needs to understand these things. Secure commitment from top management to continual improvement and the development of 50,001 ready, and check off these boxes and sign it. It would be great. Approving the scope and boundaries, deploying the energy policy. I won't read all of them. Considering energy performance as part of our design and procurement process, empowering an energy team, considering energy performance in strategic planning, and so forth. A lot of items here for your top manager to commit to. So just quickly, is everyone feel, and again, you don't necessarily have to answer specifically, but do you feel like this is something a conversation you could have with your plant manager? Do you feel your plant manager already is aware of this in other management systems? Any thoughts? Is this going to be something that will be very successful, or could this be a challenge? Anybody?
It shouldn't be a challenge at all.
That's the sense I get from just working with you guys and seeing what you've got in place and moving forward. So That would be my take as well. Some places we work with, it is a challenge, a big challenge, and it can be a barrier and can be frustrating. But I agree that it very likely this would be very successful, and a conversation you can have and just relate 50,001 to the other ISO systems that you have in place and are certified to. So again, it's a guide, it's a list of things to check on and think about, um, and to use to help communicate with your top management at your sites, primarily at the site level. Okay, task number 5, energy
Michael,
policy. Yes, yes, yes.
beside the top management, should we have like some document to prove that we also communicate the responsibilities to the key personnel that have a big impact on the energy consumption or something like that?
Yeah, in fact, there's a task that we'll do, awareness and competency and awareness, task 14, which addresses that exact topic of, as far as other than that task 4 is specifically focused on top management.
Mm-hmm.
Task 14 will focus on all the other people, energy team leader, energy team members, people that operate SEUs, general awareness for the population of the whole plant. You know, who needs to know, what do they need to know at a very general level? So it's a great question, and we'll definitely address that in task 14.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Do you all have an energy policy yet, or do you have one planned? And the second part of the question would be, is it going to be from corporate, or would each site have an energy policy? Have any thoughts on that from anyone? How you might approach that?
I looked at the documents on Doug's website and he's already got one started on there.
Okay,
From the
excellent.
corporate.
So when he releases that, we'll get it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That would make sense. Typically, you don't need an energy policy at every individual site. You have one at Doug's level or a corporate headquarters level, and then the sites can adopt that and get that implemented and start making people aware about it. Sometimes it's combined. I've seen places that have energy, environmental, safety, health policy, all combined into one. And there's just certain aspects of that the 50,001 wants you to get into your energy policy, and as long as those are blended in, a combined policy is absolutely just fine. So these are some of the things that the 50,001. There's my short and sweet energy policy. Although that probably wouldn't pass muster, it doesn't have all the aspects in it, but we shall save energy. That's the bottom line. But basically, it needs to be appropriate to the organization, which that makes sense. But it has a framework for that you will have objectives and targets. It includes a commitment to achieving those objectives and targets. You have a commitment to meet your legal and other requirements, which that should already be in a policy for environmental and safety. Includes a commitment to continual improvement of the energy performance and the energy management system. That may not be in a current policy. That may be something you need to specifically add, because it is a requirement of the standard and 50,001 ready that you continually improve and show energy performance improvement. Procurement and design activities. You're going to support, the procurement of energy efficient products, and you're going to support designing activities that consider energy performance. Design and procurement may not be in a current policy, but they would need to be mentioned in an energy policy. So those are a couple things. And these are right out of the 50,001 ready. I'm sorry, 50,001 standard. Once the energy policy is established, it must be made available as documented information. It should be published on bulletin boards, TVs, intranets, communicated across the organization, be available to interested parties as appropriate. And again, you want to periodically review and update it. And that's part of the Plan, Do, Check Act. Periodically you're going to have a management review, and you're going to check and say, hey, this is our policy. It may be our energy, environmental, safety, and health policy. Is it look good? Anything changed? Anything to tweak? Oh, nope, we're good. Or yes, we need to change this or whatever. This is just an example. In this particular case, this is an energy intense facility, so they're probably melting or have some very high energy process, but they have long-term environmental and economic sustainability goals, but they're committed. They have an overall reduction. They want to reduce their energy use per ton of product by 25% in 10 years. And I should have a baseline in here, like in 10 years from 2018 or something, ensure continual improvement, deploy resources to achieve targets, legal and other, and so forth. So this has an acronym, REDUCE, but it hits all the buttons for energy. And again, this can be blended in with another one. This is an energy only policy. You can certainly have combined blended environmental, energy, health and safety policies for sure. Looking 50,001. Again, we shall have an energy policy which is approved by top management and communicated across the organization. Awareness of the energy policy is very important. We'll see that also again in task 15. Everyone on a site really needs to at least have an awareness that you do have an energy policy. Getting it done, draft your policy, top management approves the policy, and incorporate the policy into awareness, task 15. Very straightforward. Section 5.1B, this again in leadership, full description, draft the energy policy. It just tells you some things you want to be able to do. Approve the energy policy. Site manager should sign off on that, would be great, or central office person. Playbook, optional guidance. Energy policy is very much related to a 14,000 policy. And it can be, again, this says it can be combined into a single integrated management system policy, or the energy policy could stand alone. But there are certain aspects of the energy that are very specific to energy that you want to make sure you incorporate. And then there's the playbook. You can download the playbook, which we're going to look at. Again, this is just a checkpoint. Energy policy includes commitments to the following. Boom, 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 boom. And you could reword this and say, our combined energy, environmental, health, and safety policy includes specific energy commitments to the following. And just you want to check those boxes off. Our energy policy is, you can put it right in here. In this case, it was in a separate file. That's it. That's it. Approved by top management and so forth. Incorporated into the awareness program and so forth. Very straightforward. We want to meet these commitments. We want to make sure it gets into the awareness program and top management approves it, or corporate level person. Any questions on the energy policy? Energy team and resources. One of the things we see is lean manufacturers are always lean staffed, and people that are doing the energy team have, that's one of 17 things that they're doing or more. But setting up an energy team authorized by top management to oversee the ENMS. Responsibilities and authorities are assigned and communicated, and processes are in place for providing those resources. Some of the things to think about: how will you organize your energy teams at your sites? Do you have this structure in place? Are you, are the roles identified? I think for the most part you do. You have identified the people. You've got people that are focusing on energy and on this cohort, and that were attending the training in Michigan, and some of the sites have added other people beyond that. So, how will the central office support the energy teams? We've talked about that some in terms of some documents and so forth. Responsibilities and authorities assigned, processes in place, and how does the central office communicate? That's already kind of in place. Cross-functional is good if you can get people from across functions in your energy team. even from finance or purchasing or design, manufacturing engineers, other people, is good that they have an awareness and can contribute. Having a team leader, having an energy team leader, resources, have a roster, team meetings. From an internal audit point of view, if I go do an internal audit, one of the things I like to say is, can you show me your energy team? Who's on the energy team? Do you have a roster, or just tell me who it is? Do you have periodic meetings? Do you have minutes from those meetings? Action items? Can I see examples of that? And again, you just want people to be aware that there is an energy team, that there's an energy team leader. Some sites we've worked with will have like an energy team leader designation letter that the plant manager signed and says, hey, Michael Stowe is the new energy team leader. Any energy related issues, suggestions, ideas, please connect with Mike, whatever. Again, leverage your site's 14,000 knowledge base. You've got system subject matter experts on 14,001 that have been doing 14,000 for a number of years. They know 14,000. They have a team. This is all things they know. So if there's a 14, if you're not, you may be the 14,000 person. If you are, that's excellent. If you're not, you may want to connect with the person that's the 14,000 site leader or environmental health and safety person, and connect them onto your team. Again, I think a lot of you are from the environmental health and safety arena, so that's already a done deal, but definitely leverage your 14,000 knowledge base at your site to help you on your energy team. Basically, you're going to have a core team that meets most all the time together. They're going to be the key functions, doing the energy management, compliance, data collection, all the types of things. You're going to have periodically, you may bring in some people to do some things, maybe HR for training or procurement and design periodically, communications or for awareness, or some operations people periodically. And then you may want to include your site leadership, invite your plant manager or invite Doug periodically to a team meeting, in person or virtual. And again, you have a very strong central office that can support you. And where do they fit into you supporting your team? You just want to include them maybe on emails or include them on invitations. Maybe they can sit in remotely on your team meeting periodically. All righty, 50,001 ready. Task 6. Energy team. We have an energy team authorized by top management. Form the energy team, document who the team leader is, schedule regular meetings, assign and communicate responsibilities, like who's doing what on the team and so forth. Task overview. This is, again, still in section 5, a couple of bullet points, section 5. Full description, form a team. Again, cross-functional. This lists some of the functions you may want to consider to include on your teams periodically. Contractors, if you have a strong contractor presence, some people outsource their HVAC contracting of all their HVAC equipment. And if HVAC equipment is a big energy consumer, maybe you want your HVAC contractor or somebody from the HVAC contractor to periodically participate. Suppliers, other people, maybe you have a strong electrical utility account manager for your site. Maybe he can periodically participate on your energy management team. Energy team leader, schedule regular energy team meetings. That's pretty straightforward. Use a calendar, schedule meetings, meet monthly, weekly, whatever. It's up to you. The standard doesn't tell you. Some of the responsibilities of team members you may want to assign in terms of data collection, recording things for the meeting, looking at projects, and so forth. Lots of great information and lists in this full description tab. Optional guidance connecting to 14,001. Certainly, a team is not required by 14,000. But both of these standards do address top management for their personnel. But 50,001 specifically does require an energy team. So a little bit different there from 14. And the energy team, you know, this task 6 is going to be very site specific. This is your site energy team. Grab the playbook right here for task 6, and we'll look at that one. Again, it's going to be very straightforward, fill in the blank. You know, we have established what we want for the qualifications of our team leader and team members. Here's our roster. Again, name, department, position, just the details of all your team members. Add others if you want to. Energy team leader, who's the team leader? We've established energy management team meetings. So this is where you can say, yep, we've got a meeting schedule. We've assigned and communicated responsibilities. The team leader is committed to these things. Again, it's all checklist. Check, check, check. Yes, we considered this. Yes, we considered this. You've identified and communicated to top management the resources that you need and so forth. Very straightforward. And it's just, form a team, assign responsibilities, meet and maintain meeting notes, and kind of check off these points. Very straightforward. And make a list, make a roster. Any questions on task number 6, energy team? And the team, depending on the size, complexity, and other factors, and the energy team may be one person. It may be 6 or 8 people. It depends. And, a large, complex manufacturing plant, you probably need a good sized team to be able to really be effective. Some places, a smaller site, maybe not as much. Again, just some thought questions to think about, for ISO 14001, for these 3 tasks, 4, 5, and 6, which are all about leadership. What do you already have in place? You've got some definitely good management commitment. You have an energy policy probably in the works. You have your energy teams at your sites. So what is already in place? Make use of those things. 50 better plants program, maybe not so much for this one. Anything in here that might be related to decarbonization, greenhouse gas emissions, you may want to consider that. Anything relative to this task. I don't know if you would want to include anything in your energy policy that stated any specific sustainability goals like net zero by 2040 or anything like that, but that's a possibility to consider. Any comments on any of this before we move on? All righty. That's all of the content that we were going to share today. We do have a few review questions, and then we'll have a little bit of looking ahead at our next steps and have some time for any final questions and answers. So if you would, please use your chat box, and I'm going to read the question, and you just type the answer, A, B, C, D, E, whatever the answer may be, into the chat box, and then we'll talk about it. So question number 1. The information flow using the 50,001 Ready Navigator is, there is not any information flow. The site is read-only. The information flow is one way, download only. There is information available, but you must add a credit card to access it. 50,001 is only available to military organizations. So if you would, please go to the chat box and type in your answer, and we'll talk about it. So we'll wait a couple minutes and give everybody a chance. Anyone else? Get a few more participants. Well, everybody answered A, which is somewhat true. My intention was for the answer to be B, because you do download. But yeah, it is read only in terms of upload, but you can download the playbooks. You can download some tools, which we'll talk about later on. But yeah, A is probably good. It's kind of I need to reword that. It's a little confusing. But B was my intended answer. Okay, question 2. When determining issues that may impact your organization's ability to have a successful energy management system, you should evaluate internal issues only. Do not worry about issues, just wing it. Evaluate external issues only, or evaluate both internal and external issues. Yeah, everybody jumped on that one. Definitely both internal and external. Number 3, joining the Better Plants program and following its goals, or maintaining LEED criteria for a building or something else like that. Those are examples of what in terms of 50,001 ready. Those are Michigan and Alabama state laws. Those are legal requirements. Those are nonconformities, or those would be considered other requirements. Joining Better Plants or following LEED criteria or some other voluntary. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. All those are D's. Thank you for all the participants. D, yes. Other requirements. And if you say that you're going to follow another requirement, then you must do that. So it is auditable. If you say, I'm going to follow LEED criteria, I'm going to follow 50,001, then I'm going to invoke something on myself voluntarily, then that's another requirement. And it is something you will need to follow. True or false? Your organization must have the authority to control its energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption within the selected scope and boundaries of your energy management system. True or false? Yes, that's definitely true. In fact, if you don't, like we mentioned with Fort Liberty, the hospital, if you don't have control over the energy efficiency use or consumption within the boundary, then that would need to be excluded from your scope. So you definitely need to be able to manage the energy within the scope of your boundaries. True, true, true. Number 5, which of the following is not a requirement for your organization's energy policy? It has to be available as documented information. It has to be communicated within the organization. It has to be submitted to your state's environmental department for approval, or it must be periodically reviewed and updated as necessary. Which one is not required by 50,001? Wait just a few seconds, see if anybody else jumps in. That is correct. It does not have to go to your state's environmental department for approval, except if you're in Alabama, then it does. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. No, see, you do not have to send anything to anybody at your state environmental department. This is your 50,001 policy, and the state is not involved. Number 6, a typical energy team consists of a core group, people who help from time to time, and leadership. True or false? Yes, indeed. That is very true. Number 7, task 1 and task 7 work together to help your organization evaluate risk and opportunities to give assurance that the energy management system can achieve its intended outcomes, including energy performance improvement, prevent or reduce undesired effects, achieve continual improvement of the energy management system and energy performance, or all of the above. What do task 1 and 7 help you do? Yes, all of the above, all of these things. Absolutely. Very good. And last question, question number 8. Task playbooks should be used as a guide to help connect the dots between 50,001 Ready and your existing processes. True or false? Yes, very true. Very true. Don't let the playbook be the dog. You're the dog. Don't let the playbook be the tail wagging the dog. It's a good guide. You use it as to the extent it helps you, but don't let the playbook be a barrier to your moving forward. And it's mainly to guide you. In your case, you have so many existing processes. You have management system experience. Take advantage of that. Use the playbook as a guide, but don't let it become a barrier to progress. Looking ahead, today we did task 1 through 7. Session 2 is in green boxes. Our next session 3 is in red. We're only doing 2 tasks next month because they're 2 significant tasks. They're important. They have some work behind them. It's all about your energy data, what comes across my boundaries, how do I know and collect what energy comes in, and then where does that energy go? What consumes that energy that comes into my boundaries? What is the users? What are my significant energy users? Understanding this energy flow and understanding where it goes and selecting your significant energy users, those are 2 very important parts. And a lot of the rest of what you do will be based on what you pick as your significant energy users. We encourage people to pick 1 or 2 or 3 at the most. You don't pick 11 significant energy users. You want to pick 1 or 2 to focus on. And you can change it or increase it later, but initially you just want to pick 1 or 2 significant energy users to focus on. This is our calendar or our webinar sessions. We've done week number 1. Today is session 2. Again, where does all that energy go? That'll be our next session in mid-August. Again, always on Tuesdays. And then we'll keep moving forward through February of 2025. These open calls, I'll be sending out information about that. We'll have some time between sorting out the energy data and engaging other functions where we'll be working on our energy maps, our energy data collection, our energy improvement project lists, objectives and targets, and we'll need some time to do that. You will need some time to work on those tasks. And we'll have 2 calls where you can call in just for like to check in, and I'll be sending out those appointments for these 2 dates soon. Again, this is our 4-week cycle. We have Tuesdays 10 to 12 for our group webinars, skip a week, then our one-on-one calls are also on Tuesdays. You have your time slots. You should have all your appointments for your one-on-one calls. The appointments for all the group webinars have also been sent out. And then the 4th week, again, no planned events, and then we repeat this cycle. Webinar, nothing, one-on-one call, nothing, and so on. This is a one-on-one call. The time slots and appointments have been sent. This is the way we're set up. These time slots, next set of calls is late in July. Should be 2 weeks from today. Again, these are our, you should have, just check and make sure you have these one-on-one call appointments on your calendar. If you don't, let me know, but we have sent these out. You should be the same time every month. And again, our next set of calls are on July 30th. For session 2, some things to think about is get your playbooks, the blank playbooks for sessions 1 through 5. I'm sorry, task 1 through 5. We'll also send you some playbook examples that you can review. So you'll have an example, you'll have a blank. You can use the playbooks to create your own version of the playbook or to help you, to guide you to review the documented information that Doug has shared on the central drive or the shared drive. Use these playbooks as guides to help you connect to your existing processes, add things related to energy to those processes. So work on task 1 through 7 aspects between now and session 3. Use existing 14,001, which you have some of those documents to share. And we will definitely look at the playbooks and the documents or anything you want to focus on task 1 through 7 on our next one-on-one calls. Thinking about looking ahead to session 3, you want to, review, if you have ISO 50001, you can review the section on energy, section 6, energy planning. Again, you want to keep your 50001 ready. If you do make progress on your task, start any of these or get to the in review stage or even complete some, you can go ahead and update these 1 through 7, update them to the correct status that they're in the meantime. Review task 8 and 9. Probably the best thing to look at is the getting it done tab and the task statement and maybe some other things. You can go ahead and download the playbooks for 8 and 9. And then here's some questions to think about. What are all the energy types that come into my site? Do I know those? Do I have data on those? Good data collection methods on these energy types. Could you readily make a pie chart of the energy for like a year, pick year 2023 and say, this is all the energy that came into my site. Think about what we call relevant variables. These are things that impact your energy. Does the outside air temperature, like does your energy go up on very cold winter days or very hot summer days if you're heating and cooling? Does your production level, your processes for production, if you're making a higher number of seats or components, or fabric or whatever, does your energy go up based on how much production you have? And significant energy users, how do you know what your significant energy users are? And we'll talk about these, but those are just some thought questions to think about in the meantime. Again, always in your case, consider what is already in place for ISO 14001. And again, task 8 and 9, task 1 through 7 do have central office support and are 14,000 related to quite a bit. Task 8 and 9 are very site specific. It's your energy at your site and they're very energy focused. Not too much relationship to 14,001. Site agreements, we have everybody with 2. The 2 more in process. Again, these are basically, you're going to attend, you're going to participate, you're going to implement things, you're going to send data, inform, and apply for 50001 ready recognition. So hopefully we'll get these 2. I know they're in process. We'll get those knocked out soon. Other data collection, this is where we stand on individual participants. I've sent out a couple of reminders for this one, but there's 10 of 22 have completed the personal individual certificate. I'm sorry, not certificate, survey. This is pretty quick. Hopefully, I did send out another reminder earlier this week or late last week. And again, just a couple of sites have done the site. But this one is only one per site. So I send it to everybody, but not every individual needs to do the site. Only a group of you can do it, or one person from each site can do it. But that's why there's only 8 sites and 22 people. So please take a look at those survey links in the email. If you can't find the email with the links, let me know. I can resend it to you. But we definitely want to get these taken care of. I did send out the, Yes.
No, yeah, Mike, I was just gonna say Grand Rapids will get all of those, the agreement, the surveys, both individual and site profiles that'll be submitted to you guys tomorrow.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Aaliyah. Appreciate it. I did send out the gap assessment. This is a little bit of a chore. It's not complicated, it's just kind of long. But this is very important. This is where you look at the 50,001 task, and each task has some subtask, and you score yourself on where you think you are right now relative to the task. And I just want to quickly share that for just a minute. There's some instructional tabs. It's an Excel spreadsheet. This tab here is identifying information. This is like, your site, your city, your state, country, organization name, date completed, who completed it, the leader of the completer, and then others that participated. So if you do it as a team, you might have a team leader and then 2 or 3 participants, or maybe just one person. But this is just who did it, what site and who did it. But then basically then it's just these bullets of scoring. So for example, this is a task we talked about today, identify strategic issues that affect you. And the score can be is a pull down menu. So if you go into this box, you get a pull down menu and you score yourself from 0 to 4. And literally 0 says we are uncertain what this subtask even means. And we haven't even heard of this. And then 1 is a little bit more, and 4 is like we've done it, we've got it, we're on top of it, we're leading the pack with it. So somewhere between 0 and 4. This section is where you can say, what is headquarters doing? You have a strong headquarters site. So you may say, I'm a 1 on this, and headquarters is really leading or at least contributing to this. And then this other column is for you to use, what do I have in place? And this is where you might want to link up with 14,000 and say, yeah, my site, I have 14,000 that already covers this. I just need to connect up with that. And, these are sources of things that you already have in place that you can leverage. So it's score it. Where is a central office relative to this task? If you may not know, just pick something. And then is there anything I have with 14,000 or any other resource that I can leverage? And I can just put a note in here to remember. So it's not very complicated. There's just a lot of lines. So each of the tabs matches the tabs in the 50,001 Ready Navigator. So context we covered today, leadership we covered, and then some of these we haven't covered yet, but just, read, this is task 7 through 13 and so forth. And so once you go through each of the tabs and score each line, then you want to save as or save this with your site name in the file name and send it back to me. And it'll summarize your score. I put 1-1. I haven't put any scores in, but it'll summarize your score. It'll give you a list of things where you need improvement. Right now it's showing everything because there's no score. It'll summarize your list of central office and your inventory of of those items you said you could help you in that third column. So it summarizes all your results and it can be very useful moving forward. But this is a great exercise. It helps you know where you are. It helps you see the extent of the 50,001 system as you go through these bullet points. And again, I sent that out, I think Sunday night, sometime y'all should have it. And again, I sent it to everybody. So, there's a bunch of people on the team from Grand Rapids. Aaliyah, you may want to do this yourself. You may want to get your team together and sit down and kind of do it together. That
It's
either
going
way
to
is
be a
fine.
team effort, Mike.
Yeah, I understand. Excellent. And
We have an
but
energy
again,
team for a reason.
exactly right. You don't need one from each person, one from each site only. So just keep that in mind. This is not an individual exercise. It's the team leader or the team together, but we just need one per site or per headquarters location. Any questions about that document? Okay, thank you. I did put like 2 weeks to try to get it back by Friday the 26th, if possible. And then this one I haven't set yet. This energy performance improvement report. We'll do this after we talk about energy and significant energy users. That's it. Resources and questions. We're about to noon. Any questions about anything we talked about today? Anything at all?
Thank you, Michael. And
Yes.
only a comment. As Doc mentioned, we are integrating energy management system into the EHS manual in order to have an integrated manual. It's still in draft, so any improvement ideas like the ones we have seen here are welcome. Here in the chat, we are leave the link where we will be uploading the documents. So please take a look, and if you have any improvement ideas, are welcome.
Thank
Okay.
you very much, Socorro. Anything else? Anyone? All righty. Just a couple reminders, check on your surveys, do those if you have not, look at your data collection. I'm sorry, your gap assessment form. If you don't see that email, just let me know. And again, that's a blank form, save it with your site name in it. And then when you've completed it, send me back a copy. And those are the next couple items to work on. And then again, we'll have a one-on-one call in a couple weeks and keep moving forward. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And again, always, if you think of something in between our sessions, please reach out. You don't have to wait till the next session or the next one-on-one call. If you're working on something and have a question, don't let it hold you up. Reach out. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Hey, Mike,
Yes, sir.
did you get the documents from McCullough?
I think I have everything from McCullough. I
Okay.
feel like I do. I'll double check. But yes, I think so.
All right. I don't think I received the thing on the 14th, but I'll go back and check. I don't remember seeing it.
Okay. Yeah,
But
just if you don't
if I didn't,
let me know.
Ryan probably did. We got a